Jules, I want to get into this, as I said, a little bit more. People I always find it weird when people like describe how teams play, right? Because they say, oh, they always play the same way and they always have energy and they're always forward looking. Yeah, when teams win, they always look that way, regardless of how you play. Yeah. What seems pretty obvious here, though, is you have a team that tries to build from the back all the time, and as a result, sometimes expose itself. They leak a ton of goals, right?
Yeah, 26, I think, in 19 or 28 in 19, something like that.
You don't normally win the league in those situations, but if you outscore them, it doesn't matter. People have said, oh, it's a Cruyff thing. There's a Cruyff legacy there. Who knows, right? It's not like Cruyff's become like a byword for any kind of attacking football.
Yeah.
But they do a lot of pressing and counter-pressing. And in some ways, it's not dissimilar to a version of what we've seen Pep do. Yeah. And obviously he's evolved over the years. It's a version of what Klopp does, not so much in the build-up, but certainly in the counter-press, right? I'd argue it's not something we've seen very much in Spain from the top teams, in the sense that the old Barcelona of Guardiola, the first treble-winning one, they did that a little bit, but then they also had Messi. They could also slow the game to a crawl when they wanted to. They controlled. When they recovered, they didn't instantly try to attack and score the way this team does. So I would argue that's a little bit different. Mm. It's not something we've seen for Real Madrid. It's always been intermittent with Real Madrid. Yeah. Certainly not Atleti over the years. Maybe Real Sociedad are the one team that have done that. I mean, among the top teams, right?
Yeah.
And Real Sociedad, maybe also because of what you said, it's very taxing physically to do that. Real Sociedad don't have the biggest squad. Obviously, they're involved in Europe. Why is it, do you think, that this kind of trend or this approach, which has been frankly commonplace in Germany and in the Premier League with certain teams, certainly, why we haven't seen so much of that at the top end in Spain?
I think it's maybe a cultural reason, in the sense that this is not really the style is more the technical style, and the tempo is maybe a little bit slower. Even when you've got input from different managers who might have different ideas, I think you always go back to maybe the way they play, the kind of players that they form in academies, who are usually not the most physical and that can run forever, but instead are just the more technical and play the game that way. Maybe it's that. I just love the fact that some are trying to do it. Some, like La Real, are a bit of a mix of everything. So you've got that technical ability from the Spanish culture, but also the high intensity that you can implement to some players. There's no reason why Spanish players can't run. It's just not. This is not.
Rodri runs.
Yeah, for example, you're right. So I just love. But I think the fact that Mitchell, in a way, last season, especially in the first half of the season, where they had a decent season, we said it the other day, they finished 10th, they had 49 points, so just 1 point more than what they already have now, but were maybe more defensive, and evolved in the second half of last season, and then suddenly with the new signing in the summer, who have made a big impact, really. We can talk about his substitutions, because I think his coaching is really, really good, and we saw against Tuani and Porto having a really good impact on that game against Atletico Madrid, late in the game. But the starters, Savinho, Tsigankov, Dovbyk, all of that is really, really good addition to a squad that was already a decent squad, not a title-winning potential squad, but it was still a decent squad for La Liga.
Yeah, I think the reason we haven't seen it in Spain tactically, it was a typical thing where I asked your question because then later I wanted to give my explanation.
No, it's good.
Is when you play that way and you screw up, right? So when you press and the other team plays through you and you can see the goal, you look really, really stupid. And I think especially for the top teams, I'm thinking specifically of Barcelona and Real Madrid, there's not that much of a tolerance for that when you're the manager. And there's not necessarily an imperative to do it, because you generally have far better players than almost anybody you'll play.
Yeah.
And so and I'm not saying these are defensive Barcelona isn't necessarily a defensive-minded team. I'm talking historically over the last 10 years, right? Or even Real Madrid, maybe a bit more so under Ancelotti. But it's more the fact that if you once you have the ball, you want to keep the ball, because you want more skillful players. So you're not going to go vertical except maybe when you recover deep and then you want to counter, you want to release Vinicius or whatever. That's what I find so interesting about Pep and his evolution at City. Maybe the more vertical side started at Bayern. They could keep the ball and have 80% possession because they have better players than almost anybody they face, right? But you choose to mix this in. And so sometimes you give up stupid goals, but that's okay. I do think, and I think it's more of an issue in Spain because, like you said, they probably produce more technically gifted players than anybody. I'm speaking broad, very, very broad generalizations, right?
Yeah.
But the emphasis is on technique. If you're technically gifted, you can play through the press. So there's no press that's so effective, right? Whereas here in England, in the Premier League, even though obviously the technical quality is very high, and we can debate maybe it's higher than in Spain, there is more of that mindset that, you can attack that center back and force him into a mistake.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's more of a tolerance, I think, from the fans that they actually want to see that. And in Germany, certainly.
Yeah.
And in Germany, we've seen that for a long time. Do you think they can get over this leaking goals?
No, because I think this is the way they play. So I think you see the 3 goals they concede. They're 3 goals really that I know it's Atletico Madrid and Morata is in form of his life. But if you look at it, the flick from Griezmann for the first goal, 1, Griezmann should never win the header, and 2, the defensive line from Girona is so all over the place that Morata is just onside. The ball from the pole on the 3rd goal, it's just, again, you can't be caught
What about
like
Eric
that.
Garcia on the 2nd goal?
And I mean, this is even worse. You know how much I rate Eric Garcia. I think they're fine with it because they will always create, and they ride their luck a little bit, as we saw against Barcelona too, when Barca had a lot of chances in that second half, could not really score, and then got done late in the game on transition. So I just love that team. I love watch them because they are so good to watch, so entertaining.